Hey, everybody. Welcome to Game Audio Hour number 158. It's our weekly podcast. We discuss all things game audio, from creative ideas to latest techniques, project experiences to audio secrets. Here's where you'll find your in-depth coverage and opinion related to game audio. And I'm going to start over there with a quiet Chase. Chase, how you doing?
Pretty stressed.
I wondered why you're so quiet in the green room.
Yeah. How you guys doing?
You getting ready for anything big happening in a couple of days?
Yeah, I am.
Go to chasesawesomeness.com and you'll get all the details, right?
Yeah, I'll be posting the official information tomorrow night.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, I'll see you, so I don't have to say break a leg. I'll be there to break your leg if you'd like.
Oh, thanks. I'm gonna need that.
You're welcome. Distract you from the stress at hand. I'm going over to the next picture I got here. Dan, how you doing, man?
Hey, what's happening, man?
It's late, huh?
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's late everywhere. I'm
9.
No, I'm in Seattle. So.
Oh, why did I think you were on? I thought you were on the East Coast.
No.
Oh,
no.
I forgot. We talked about this, didn't we?
Yeah.
Epic. I see Epic, and I think North Carolina.
Yeah, I don't think that. We're. No, you could think that. No, Epic. So Epic has their main thing in North Carolina, but then they also have a bunch of offices all over. So they got an office up in Bellevue, Washington. That's where I am.
No, that's right. I'm being an idiot. Well, hey, good to see you. Thanks for pointing out my idiocy, or at least being the sounding board while I did it. Nothing new.
It's my gift to you.
Just stand there and let me do it. No, you handled it very well, and I should have been paying attention. Mike Shapiro, get me out of this.
Well, I'm just exhausted after listening to the first two introductions, so you're going to have to move on.
Okay, well, let's go. Let's go over there to Vincent. How you doing, man?
Hi. I think this might be the first time that I am chatting with you guys live from what will eventually be my new home studio, but it's in quite some disarray at the moment.
This is the new house, right?
Yeah. Very few things are actually set up. I've got my computer that is currently behind the iMac that I'm actually using to chat with you guys. And eventually I'll maybe talk about some of the things that I actually have set up for this place, but it's unfortunately quite messy right now. So maybe in a few weeks, we can talk about some of this cool stuff, like this cool engineer's chair that I got, the new keyboard that I got, this custom PC build that I just did, all sorts of fun things.
How about the chicken behind you, man?
Wait a minute, the what?
Chicken.
Yeah, there is a chicken.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's like the first thing you set up. Must be really important, man.
It actually is. It is a holy chicken. It was blessed with holy water. During
is that what happens when you're blessed with holy water? You turn into a statue.
Yeah.
No, not quite like that. I think usually holy water does the opposite thing. You got petrified, then you can remove your status ailment. That's usually how those games go.
I'm into those games.
Yeah.
Well, Vince, welcome to your new house.
Thank you.
And as pointed out in the chat room, happy belated birthday.
Yeah, man.
Oh, hey, Sean, thanks. And yeah, thanks for the birthday wishes.
And now on to our very special guest, Robert Wainscott. How you doing?
I'm doing well this evening.
From Black Box Analog Designs. We met a couple of months ago, I guess, huh?
It was a couple months back, yeah.
And then I immediately ingratiated myself into your best friend position. I don't know if you realize that yet.
I think it was that space beer that you fed me. This brought me over to his house, and truly some of the best beer I've ever had. I believe the hops were sent into space for that particular beer.
That is true. It was space beer, only the best for you.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of made sense given your genius about that kind of about technology and everything, which is why I've asked you to be on the show. So to give some background, Robert and I happen to live in the same town, and I am a lover of the Black Box. Am saving every penny I can get a hold of to get one, and somebody said, "Hey, do you know the guy who makes those is living in the same town as you?" And I was like, "What?" So made arrangements to get together over beers, and we started talking, and then we just kept hanging out. And then I said, I would love to have you on the show to kind of talk about not only just the unit there you have behind you, but specifically just introduce people to people who are making the kind of hardware that we all want to use.
Well,
and you said yes.
Yeah, and now here I am. I get to talk to a whole nother, I guess, crew of geeks. But I'm a gamer, so I'm really looking forward to also hearing what these gamers have to say.
Yeah, well, there's some brilliant people in game audio for sure, and we've got some people. Robert doesn't have the chat in front of him, so we're going to filter those for him. It's actually me. I said, don't worry about the chat. We'll filter it for you. And so, Robert, what you can't see is we've got a few people in the chat room right now that are probably going to hit you with some questions. The big thing is that the unit you have behind you, the HG2, which is the black box, is now software version on Plugin Alliance. And I'm finding all kinds of people who have purchased it and are using it and absolutely love it. And one particular is Mike Shapiro. Mike, I was curious if you'd like to start off with like any kind of questions or findings that you have that might help us get kick-started into a conversation.
Well, I was hoping just to have about an hour of one-on-one tech support with Robert, because I've got all these questions. But perhaps a better and more useful question is, Robert, why don't you just give us the Reader's Digest summary of who you are, where you're coming from professionally, and what black box analog design does?
Oh, you're smart. I should have thought to do that.
Well, the easiest way I can phrase that is to say, I work in the industry. And when you work in the industry, when that telephone rings, people ask me, what do you do? What do you want me to do? Do you want me to score your film? I can do that. Do you want me to record your album? Would you like me to be the technical director on your off-Broadway show? I've done media work for probably half of the Fortune 500 companies. That's just how things are here and now. I'm, designing and manufacturing the tools I wished I always wanted to have. So,
yeah, and we love it too. Hey, while you were saying that, Robert, it reminded me of, it vaguely reminded me of something we were talking about over at Topa Topa. And how you got into making the box itself, the HG2. And I'll be darned if my brain didn't just make that disappear. I'll come back to it. But, was the HG2, oh no, I know what it was. I wonder if you'd share the story about how you kept making versions of it. And then when somebody decided to keep it, you knew you were on the right path.
Well, actually, that would be my first project, which was a mic pre. I don't have any background in electronics, so when it was time for me to think about putting things together, I just sort of put things together the way a mixer would. I just made every variable that you could have variable, just like a mixer would. So when I would put things together, and if I got something that worked, I would just take it to people. I would just knock on their doors and hand it to them. And I kept doing that until finally somebody just refused to give it back. And I said, well, what will you give me for it? And one of the other things I did is I never made any notes. So every time I built something, it was from memory. And I did that so that I would intentionally make mistakes. Probably 20% of what's in that box right there is the result of mistakes. Someone that went to school for the thing I do would never have come up with this thing. No one in their right mind would. So in my opinion, you have to leverage the one thing you have. And the one thing I had was absolute ignorance of electronics. And I leveraged that. I refused to study other people's designs. I literally just sat there with piles of stuff and stuck them together until that came out.
Man,
well, speaking as like I too have no background in electronics design, but I couldn't create a sound processor. So clearly you have some skill and you're being very modest about it.
No, I really, no. When, no.
He's modest, trust me.
No, I I had a beautiful, nice little 5-room facility in 2008. And we all know what happened in 2008. And at that time, I had a lot of corporate clients, and they all panicked. And my partner and I lost everything. And I thought that maybe if I could fix electronics, or if I knew something about electronics, maybe somebody would, hire me to do something. I was really desperate. And I didn't have the mind to be able to figure out what other people did. It was just easier to just build my own stuff. It just made sense. But if you brought me someone else's design, it probably wouldn't make any sense to me.
So you're coming.
My designs make sense to other people.
I'm sure people are studying them. That's for sure.
So it sounds like you were coming from the background of being maybe an engineer or composer or other industry participant, and you just wanted some tools that you yourself could use. Is that the origin story of this thing?
More or less, because there's two of us in our company. There's me, and there's my partner Eric Rossi, who's there in Hollywood, and he's a mix engineer. But we go back, now almost 17 years, and I view him as my first customer. Anything I make, I have to sell it to him first, and if I can sell it to him, I can sell it to anybody. And his part in the company is, he makes the things I build mass producible. Designs the faceplates. We had to learn a lot of skills, everything from molding our own knobs to doing the metal work to 3D CAD to circuit board design. My partner learned circuit board design in a weekend. People go to school for this for years. A weekend. I gave him the game. Anybody here ever play the game Free Flow, where you have to connect dots? It's a pretty simple game. You get different colored dots, and they all have to connect, and the lines can't cross. I told him, download this game, play it on your phone. And he did that. And then once he mastered it, it took him a weekend to do circuit board design. All circuit board design is making sure the lines don't cross. He didn't have to understand what he was plugging in. He just put his art as an artist into circuit boards. He makes beautiful circuit boards for me. And it took him a weekend to figure it out. And we used a game as the engine to get us to that point.
I can't tell if I should be extremely impressed or be having this horrifying Wizard of Oz moment where, there's all this shenanigans going on beyond this device that I love so much. But that's so. At what point did you decide to make a company that produces audio gear? When did you make that transition?
Two things happened. One, a gentleman by the name of Jack Douglas was one of those people I took a box to and didn't give it back. And for those of you that don't know, Jack Douglas is, he did all of Aerosmith's albums.
John Lennon.
Yeah, he produced John Lennon's Imagine, Supertramp, The Who.
Yeah.
He's an old school guy. Getting him on board was a real coup. And I gave him a unit in exchange for him, like a sponsorship. Well, you've got to say nice things about me. I get to use your image, blah, blah, blah. At the same time, a little video my partner and I had made of us building one of these things by hand, a little 6-minute video, kind of went viral in the offices of Vintage King, which is the world's largest distributor of boutique audio gear. Yeah. And they contacted us, and we said, well, and by the way, we got this Jack Douglas guy, and it all sort of came together at once.
That's brilliant.
Lucky, too. Of course, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
That is the truth. Well, you have it there behind you. So it's a beautiful piece, and I wanted to explain to people what it's doing, and I was trying to find, while you were talking, in my mind, kind of a simplified version to explain. And I figured, instead of stepping on your toes, maybe you, because you've had to introduce the HG2 to so many people, and you make more than just the HG2. I'm just talking about that for now. What is the simplest way to explain to our audience what the software/box does?
It's kind of a reality box. You know, that box there, if you thought about it in scientific terms, it's a harmonic fractal generator. You know, because I'm working with vacuum tubes and transformers, basically magnets and light bulbs, I have an extremely fast processor. And because I have an extremely fast processor, I get to have a lot of fun with that. So I can make, just like nature does, sort of self-similar patterns. You know, not a straight harmonic or a harmony of something, but you know how sort of the tree looks like the branch, which looks like the twig, which looks like the veins in the leaf kind of thing.
Absolutely.
You've all seen that in nature. That's what that box does. Again, because I have vacuum tubes and transformers, light bulbs and magnets, I have a very fast processor, and it allows me to just sort of create self-similar infinity loops. So when I feed sound into it, I just make self-similar infinity loops, and the human ear really likes that. I can make things appear to be twice as loud as they actually are without really changing anything. And the box also has a distortion EQ. The human ear perceives something that's distorted as being much louder than it actually is. So instead of having to try to slather more stuff on top of things when you want to hear more of it, why not just pick those particular frequencies and then just really distort them in a pleasant way using a vacuum tube? So I have a distortion EQ, which if you've used the plugin, you know, that's that little tilt you see in the saturation. That saturation section, it's a distortion generator. So I have a harmonic fractal generator and basically a distortion generator, and the human ear loves it because it very much mimics what the real world does.
Wow. Mike, I know you're a fan of the software as well. Is there any specific uses that you've use cases that you find it really strong?
Well, my needs are different from somebody who's doing a lot of pop stuff. I'm mostly an orchestral composer, either working with live instruments or emulations. And what I love to do personally with emulations is add just a little bit of each tube and some moderation, because it gives it an organic feeling, a little bit of a live quality that helps warm up some of the very sterile samples. And it adds humanity to the mix. And there's for me personally, that's more important than boosting the apparent volume, because it's not as much a high priority for me as it might be for a pop producer. But I love the way it warms up the sound, and it just gives it that human quality.
Do you use it across? Oh, sorry, Robert, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, you absolutely get it. It's the humanity, the realism. It's a realism box. But yeah, thank you.
Mike, do you use it specifically on a channel? Do you use it on a bus of strings? Do you use it with horn strings, the whole works?
Gosh, I'm really on the spot here telling my use in front of the guy who invented it, but
no, there's something great about that, because even if you find out that you're using it like it wasn't meant to be used, but it still sounds good, then we've discovered something awesome.
That's true. But this is like, you know, your thesis defense. I use it in moderation on the mix bus when I typically use it. Occasionally, there might be an individual instrument sample that to me feels very sterile, like certain samples that come out of a city in Eastern Europe that rhymes with Shmiana, to me tend to sound a little bit stark and not very cold. And I find that the HG2, occasionally on an instrument channel, will add that same quality, that life quality to it, that kind of humanity to it and warmth. So those are the two cases where I use it. But I think someone who's more pop oriented would have even more and more versatile range of uses for it, because I think there's a lot of tools for people who are looking to just squeeze a little more violence out of their drum bus, or just give a sense of hugeness to a mix. Yeah,
and there's so many of those kind of soundtracks in games. Bob asked, and oh, sorry, I'm tapping you're probably hearing I rolled off the bass, so I'm sorry if I'm tapping the mic mouse and you can hear it. Bob asked, does it have phase effects? Robert, do you have phase effects built in?
You know, it's a stereo unit, and the non-linearities of working with vacuum tubes, because their tolerances, it's not like modern solid state devices where everything, just does what it's supposed to do. Part of the beauty of working with these vacuum tubes is that realism comes from the fact that the tubes are just non-linear. So phasing comes in there naturally and completely randomly. And some of what that does is the unit sort of acts, that phasing makes the unit almost act like a stereo widener. That's at least what people report back to me, that the non-linearities of this unit that's why things sort of sound bigger. One of the reasons that things sound bigger is because of the phasing. Is Bob saying that I'm answering his question, or is he?
Yeah, he's in the chat room. Oh, no, I'm sure you did answer the question, because it certainly answered what I was thinking about. From a sound design perspective, I can see it being very useful for like gunshots and stuff like that are going to be these huge, loud, very fast, because you got fast processing, however fast, I'll call it processing, although it's tubes and stuff. Do you hear anything from sound designers? Do they say, hey, I love this box for this kind of sound design or that? Or are we reaching kind of like undiscovered ground? Because I'm about to go do that. I'm about to go bug you for a box and start doing some sound design through it.
Well, this particular box was based off of my very first product, which was a mic pre. Every time I sold one to somebody, they would always tell me, gosh, if you had a line level version of this, I'd buy this. And found that people were reamping a lot of their stuff through my mic pre's, using my mic pre as a reamping box. And that sort of led to this, just a straight up box for that. But because that comes from the mic pre, and I know that the mic pre was really popular and still is really popular on very explosive items like a snare, or just something that can really absorb a lot of beating and do it naturally. And again, with these solid state devices, everything's either fine, and I'm pointing to this computer now. Everything's either fine or it's not fine. There's no, it either is or it isn't. And the nice thing again about magnets and light bulbs is you can really you can just pound the hell out of them. And that's kind of nice.
Speaking of the mic pre, anything that we could keep an eye out for?
Yes, I have a brand new mic pre that's it's in production now. I expect it to, with any luck, be out before Christmas. It was shown off at NAMM last year. Probably what I'm hoping its claim to fame will be is I've built it in such a way that it's just impossible to clip your converters. The unit, it's impossible for the unit to give out more voltage than your converters can handle. So if you're recording something, you never lose your take. If you do something that becomes unbelievably loud and aggressive, all that information is just turned into pretty harmonics.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so it's not possible. Yes, so basically, and if you want those pretty harmonics all the time, well, you just drive it. It's an interesting design. It's another sort of vacuum tube, transformer kind of thing. I wish I could do those things with solid state, but it just doesn't work that way. But yeah, this thing's beautiful. You'll never lose a take, and the harder you hit it, the more,
Oh, that's nice. So
I love that.
So some of the
you get.
So some of the features of the HG2 then are in the mic pre, huh?
Well, yeah. I mean, things that work, it sort of makes sense to take something that works and move it, and move that around. The air feature, I have a nice little air lift that's in the HG2, and why not put that in the mic pre?
Heck yeah.
They're both,
So, quick question from me, because I really liked the old mic pre. I'm wondering if I really wanted that sound, would I basically be able to get that same sound out of this new mic pre?
Wow. Do you have one of the old mic pre's?
No, one of my friends who's an engineer over in North Hollywood, he has that, and he uses it a lot for actually specifically for recording video game, voice actors. Especially if they're doing really loud sessions with screaming. And he says it sounds great, and I thought, whoa, yeah, this sounds great. I actually had been looking for a used one for a while, and I know that they still go for like at least $1,500 used. So
Nice.
I'm like, oh man, but is this new one going to be? Would you call this new one a different animal, or is it like the old mic pre but more?
It's like the old mic pre, but more. The problem with the very first mic pre I made is it's similar to a fighter jet. The most maneuverable planes are also the most unstable. To get that kind of performance, you have to build in a lot of instability. And that first mic pre is capable of an unbelievable range of sound. But to do that, boy, that thing just lives right on the edge of, you can lose control of that thing. That thing can, I built a mic pre that can go into wild feedback, literally. And as a feature for the public, I've learned, I don't want to be insulting, but you do have to kind of dumb things down just a little bit because, people don't expect a mic pre to do that. So the new mic pre, like I said, instead of being able to drive it really, really hard like that, instead I just said, well, I'll just set it up so it can only put out this much voltage. And as you drive into it, you get all this stuff. So it does the same thing. It just does it in a slightly different way. And in my opinion, it's even more versatile than the original.
Sounds like we need both of them.
Yeah. Yes, you do.
Oh man.
Robert, those of us who are, or those are our viewers who are watching video can see the HG2 on the table behind you. And for their benefit, we can also mention that it exists as a plugin, a software emulation of your hardware that was done by BrainWorks and is now sold through Plugin Alliance. Were you involved in the software implementation? And regardless of the answer to that, how close a match do you think the plugin is to your original hardware?
Well, I can tell you exactly what they did. It's not a, it's not a secret. I had to send Plugin Alliance and BrainWorks. I had to send them a schematic of the unit, but I also had to send them a bill of materials for every single item in there, down literally to the wire, so that they could model that. And they built a model based on all the components and the schematic, and then I sent them a real one, and they tweaked it from there. And I'd have to say, boy, I think they got pretty close. I think where in some ways it makes sense still to have a real one is, no two of these sound alike. Just because the parts that are in it, most of the parts in this box have a 10 or 20% tolerance. And they just, it's kind of hard to capture all of that in a plugin. But, I know people that, prefer to have the plugin. They like the recallability of that. When the session opens, there it is. And that's maybe worth more to them than the 1 or 2% that I think the real one has a bit of an advantage, and it could just be a bias that I have towards it.
I can definitely see a case for having both, especially if you want to use it as, in our DAWs, using the plugin as something for each of our individual tracks. And I would probably have the real deal as your final mix bus.
That's what a lot of people do, and I can tell you. Now skip that part. I was gonna get all boring, but I don't know. I sell hardware. I like the hardware. I'm really pleased that this exists in a software format, because there are a lot of people that that only work in the box, and I think they're probably pretty happy to have it. I don't hear a lot of people complaining. So
Yeah, there are lots of engineers who are loving it, the HG2 for sure. I'm anxious for the mic pre as well, although I'm concerned. I'm like, which one do I get?
I have a new patch bay coming as well.
Oh yeah, tell everybody about that.
Right now, and here's where the plugin has really sort of, in a way, been a blessing. Again, I sell hardware, mic pre's and different, soon an EQ, working on that, and I thought it would be easier to sell hardware if people could manage it better. So this thing already exists. The prototypes are already built. It's a patch bay, a 32 in, 32 out, except you can control it with your phone. It's an analog patch bay, digitally controlled. So when you open your session, it'll just repatch your studio. Not only that, is you can split tracks up. So you could say, well, channel 1, I want to send it to this EQ, and I want to route it over here and do that, and I have them all meet back over here. And you can do all of that routing internally. There's no cabling. You could control it with your phone. You could run it off your DAW, open your session, your whole facility repatches itself.
That's amazing.
It exists right now, but here's the because Eric and I don't write software, Brainworks is writing the software for that for us, and that's not something that they do. They don't do sort of hardware controllers, so this is a first for them. But they were, I guess, pleased with how the HG2 plugin has went, and are willing to do this for us. So we're really excited, and this is going to be new for them, a hardware controller.
I'm super excited for the patch bay, especially because typically, just to give people an idea, like in a patch bay, I would attach a reverb here, a compressor there, another compressor over here, and I would have to go physically switch. I'd say, oh, channel 1's going into the compressor, but now I want channel 3 and 4 to go into the compressor, and I have to go wire that. I have to go take my hands and make adjustments. But what you're saying, Robert, is that I could get on my iPhone and just reroute it right there.
Or
not worry about a thing.
Or when you open the session, it'll just reroute it to how you had it.
Yeah, so
that's the problem. You might work on something and not have to work on it again for 6 months. And then when you come back, you're like, well, how did I have my studio patched? And if you're like me, you'll say, oh, I'll just remember it. There's no I'll just remember it.
That's what recall sheets are for.
Yeah, but who fills those out? You're like, oh.
I spend too much time doing that. But this saves all that problem. I just bring up the Pro Tools session. Everything repatches itself.
Yeah. Just again, tools that we want to have. I want these tools. I want mic pre's that forgive anything I do, because I consider myself a street engineer. I worked with the public a lot, and when the public comes in, they don't want to watch me look at my microphones and preamps longingly for 45 minutes while they're on the clock. You can do that with professionals. They expect that. But with the public, it's just like when I take my car to be fixed. I don't want the mechanic, to spend an hour trying to figure out which of his tools is going to fix my car. I just want him to fix my car. So, I want I want things that I just put my hands on, and whatever I want comes out of it right away. And it's that with my mic pre's or the HG2. And, I don't want to have to remember and patch a studio. I just want the studio to patch itself. So, yeah, there's just common sense products.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
The HG2 has a number of different functions. And for the benefits of our listeners who might not know exactly what it does, can you give us a whistle-stop tour of the signal path? As soon as the sound goes in, where is it going? What parts are serial, what parts are parallel, and what extra options are there? And you can do it as speedily as your patience demands.
Sure. All right. Well, the sound comes in and it goes through a transformer. I just use a transformer because that's an easy way to filter out any noise or anything. You know, for the listeners that don't know, basically a transformer is just a magnet, and you're gonna basically pass signal from one magnet to another magnet, or you're going to create another magnet, and so all the noise and junk doesn't get to pass through. And right after that, I split the signal. One part of the signal goes to that saturation circuit or that distortion generator circuit I was talking about. And you could mess with the lows, the whole frequency range, or just play with the highs. And so you can add, it says saturation, but it's really that little bit of distortion I was talking about. And like I said, it tricks the human ear into believing things are louder than they are. So after that, the original signal and that thing you just distorted meet up again and go into the first vacuum tube. So that little distortion and that stuff, that's all now going to get leveraged into this vacuum tube. It's a pentode, and the great thing about vacuum tubes is they just have a bunch of pins sticking out, and you can just attach things to them. I know that sounds insane, but you can't do that with solid state stuff. It's literally, it looks like a light bulb, and there's lots of different wires in there, and there's pins that come out, and you can put voltage to one set of wires and filter something off from another set of wires and feed it back into the power supply. I do stuff like that. I actually take the harmonics generated from this vacuum tube, and then I feed it back into itself through the power supply. So I actually begin modulating the signal onto the very power supply, feeding the vacuum tube. That's how I create these infinity loops. I know that sounds weird, but that's figured it out completely by accident. I'm using a vacuum tube that has these screens on there because radio guys would use it. And so when you broadcast on the radio, you don't want to broadcast on 5 different channels at once. So any harmonics generated in this physical vacuum tube thing, because of electrons bouncing around, they get filtered out of this screen. You can just filter it away. That way you don't, again, broadcast on 5 channels. But I just take all that stuff that's filtered away and I embed it in the very power supply that's feeding the vacuum tube. That's how I get these crazy stuff. So that's the pentode. And the harder you drive that stage, the more harmonics you create. The stage after that is the triode. That's just, like a mixer tube. You can play it against the output and get a lot of what looks like compression. You can really kind of use that tube to get some wonderful natural compression, which is going to generate even more harmonics. Gosh. I know. And then I've got a little air switch, so you can very naturally boost the high frequencies. It's not a traditional EQ. It does it in some sort of weird mad scientist thing, but you can get sort of a really natural sounding lift because it's not actually an EQ.
Wow.
I know, I sound like a crazy person when I try to explain it. That's why we have like press agents and people that talk for us, companies now. I shouldn't be allowed to talk to the public.
No, are you kidding me? I'm sitting here thinking, okay, so like you think about a channel strip, you've got an input for your microphone and a gain staging, then you've got the EQ and the compressor, you got a VCA, and this kind of box is doing many of those functions, but not intentionally. It's like, like you were saying with the triode, you've got compression in that stage if you want to. So I could see like there's so many things you could go with this. You could say, okay, I'm not going to use an 1176. I'm just going to run some sound through here and can I isolate the triode from the pentode? Can I say I don't want one, but I do want the other?
No, unfortunately, the way I run the signal is, each stage leverages the previous stage. So I like
Oh,
the
okay.
fact that it's, yeah. So because what's being done on that little saturation circuit, it's not much. It's very fine, but it gets
Yeah.
leveraged into this next amplification stage, which then gets leveraged into the next amplification stage. And
Well, it's really brilliant because you're taking the saturation, which exposes more frequencies, and then you're capitalizing on that by saying, let me mess with those frequencies that just got exposed from the saturation.
Yeah, and take some of them and embed it into the very power supply, powering the tube itself. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, this is amazing. All right, so I hope you're staying up late because I'm going to come knocking on your door here in a couple of.
Here's a purely selfish question, because I've wondered this as I've used with the software version of the unit. If you run a sound through the unit, but you've got both tubes, the knobs at noon, which I assume is either Unity or something like that, and you've disengaged the EQ that's not an EQ, and you've disengaged the saturation that's not saturation, you're trying to make it as neutral as possible. Is there still a sound that the unit imbues to your signal, even if you've tried to nullify all its features that way?
Yes. You can't completely take away the fact that this thing is physical. It's an analog device, so you are still getting some, even in a neutral state, you're getting some harmonics. Not very much, but they're definitely there. The output transformers are going to give you a little bit of sense of realism. Even though they're magnets, they don't. I wish I could show you in a photo. Your output transformers, if you do all your math right, they sort of ring like a bell. I mean, they literally ring like a bell. You just have this thing.
I'm saying wow, but my damn mic's on mute.
Yeah, I mean, I probably could show you a photo if you've got a second.
Oh no, it's fine. It's fine. I'm so excited. How long has the HG2 been out?
Let me think.
The hardware.
Yeah, the hardware's been out now maybe 2.5 years. But like everything, it sort of starts slow. I had to convince, and it wasn't too hard to convince. I'm real thankful to my main distributor M1 and Vintage King, because they bought those sight unseen. Now, luckily, I had Dave Pensato on board already, so that helped. I don't know if
yeah, I was going to bring him up. That's how I learned about it.
Mm-hmm. He basically one of those. If you go to Plugin Alliance, they have a little video, and you hear people talking about it. But he was kind enough to basically take my very first handmade prototype and play with it, and he did not want to give that thing back. Seriously, that story. I mean, I'm like, look, I don't know how to build anymore unless you give it back. I don't make notes. I build it, and literally his box. It took me about 3 months to hand wire it once I got everything figured out. And I was like, you got to give me the box back so I can build more. And but with him on board, VK and our distributors, literally bought them sight unseen, and I'm glad they did. There's no way I could have afforded to, they're costly to build. I wouldn't have been able to do it without them believing in me.
And Dave Pensato keeps going more and more in the box with software. So it really says something about the hardware, not to take away from the software, which is excellent. It says something when a guy like Dave goes, hey, here's this hardware thing to check out. By the way, if anybody isn't familiar with Dave Pensato, go to Pensato's Place. It's a great place to learn about his what's it called, in the attic or in the studio or something. He does videos where he interviews people in the industry, but also in the middle will show you a trick that he's using on like a vocal or a drum or something. And they're really quite impressive. And while we're mentioning websites, we must take a break to say thank you, Isotope, for sponsoring the show. Christmas is coming, so everybody's doing Black Friday sales. Get out there and check out what's going on with with Isotope. And then I don't want to go without mentioning visit Black Box Analog, visit Vintage King, visit Plugin Alliance to learn more about what's going on with the HG2. I guess I got all the websites out of the way.
Yeah.
One nice thing about Plugin Alliance is I believe they let you try out just about anything for 30 days. So if this sounds like a scary, weird man scientist concoction and you're not quite sure what it's going to do to your mix, just download the plugin and play with it and get a listen to it and let it prove itself to you.
It's fully functional. You can save your work. There's really no reason not to go download it. Literally, just you'll get several weeks of free use out of it.
Yeah.
And Dave Pensado was kind enough, if I remember correctly, to give us some presets. So you can, even if you're not sure how you would use it, it has a pretty good preset library in there.
I was using the Mixbus 1 preset for a while just because it was a nice jumping in point on doing something subtle and adding a little bit of that warmth and glue. And I was grateful for it because I didn't quite know, there's so many knobs, and as you've said, they interact in counterintuitive ways. So I was actually very appreciative of those presets.
Well, and I should mention, the plugin has a few more features that the box doesn't have. Well, the box has it. You just have to take the lid off and turn screws inside. So, because you can sort of adjust how the unit is. It sort of has a dark, a bright, a feel, an overall sheen to the unit. I do that internally. I just set that to where I think most people want it. But in the plugin version, you can actually set that separately. Also, the plugin version has a parallel. I don't know. I'm terrible at marketing the plugin. The plugin just has, you have access to things that you would normally have to get to inside of the box. So that they put presets there, I think makes it a little easier. Because the hardware unit, I like its simplicity. The plugin's a little more difficult to use.
All right, serious question. How many times have you been shocked and fell over and didn't get up?
Yeah, some high voltages there.
In honor of Malcolm Young, how much high voltage have you taken?
I have taken a lot of high voltage. Seriously. I do most of my work. I try to have a door open or something so that if I electrocute myself, that someone will come in and, I don't know, feed my cat or something. So my cat doesn't have to eat me.
See, I think that's what keeps me away from anything like that. The minute I plug it in, I know I'm getting zapped. Some friend of mine recently had a cassette tape deck that wasn't working. I said, I'll take a look at it. I tinker with this stuff, and I'll be damned if it wasn't 10 minutes in and I rest my arm on the power card while I'm got a screwdriver in my hand.
And a martini in the other. Yeah. Vacuum tubes are the worst. Those, those
they pack a punch.
Well, those caps can release all of that voltage in you instantly. If you've ever, like your car battery, if you ever when you touch those wires together. But yeah, a battery can give you everything it has all at once. So those 450 volt caps that I have, when those discharge 450 volts of DC into your body, it hurts. I mean, it makes me hop around. We actually got a little flag at our place, so when you got shocked, you at least have something to wave, so you didn't look stupid.
So I have to ask.
Good on you for taking the chance. I think Chase had a couple questions.
Yeah, so I have to ask, actually, as you mentioned, the character could change in the black box. If you open up the top and you get a couple, you use the screwdriver, what kind of, is that going to affect like the voltage that you're going to be putting out as well? I used to work at a electrical company doing high and audio and such, so I remember the same experiences that you, and it sounds like firecrackers and 4th of July is not happening in October last time I checked, so I don't like tinkering those things with those things. But if the consumer uses that, what will happen if they're changing the character?
I had to put some trimmers in the box. One, because it has vacuum tubes, everything sort of goes out of balance. Over time, the tubes will settle and do different things. So I have the ability to very simply sort of tweak the unit back into place. But you're never adjusting a voltage. It's always sort of a reference to ground or something like that.
Okay.
I tried to make all of my adjustments more or less a reference to ground that you change, and then you can basically, I ship them. They pretty much are left-right channel within about 1/10 of a dB, the whole way across.
Okay.
But like I said, over time it can shift. But they're all single turn trimmers. I even have a video on YouTube where I'm wearing a lab coat, and I tell people, because if I'm in a lab coat, it must be serious.
Must be official.
How to adjust that thing if you've got an oscilloscope, or if all you have is a DAW. How do you adjust this if you just have a DAW? It still makes me nervous that the public is in there, but
at your risk. So yeah, my second question then it would be is there a way to rent the equipment for those who may not be able to? I mean, they want to use they have to try before you buy with the software plugin, but it seems like that black box analog thing is a real McCoy, and it'd be interesting to hear what distributors may or may not, or if you've given the green light to rent the equipment possibly, or is that a big no?
Gosh, I've never been asked that question. I know that Vintage King will, when people are curious and they say, well, I might buy one if only I heard it. I know that they send them out, that they do that, but I don't know of anyone that rents them. Maybe you could be the first. You could see how it works. You could buy one and rent it out. But no, I don't know of a rental program, but I know in LA you can pretty much rent anything.
Yeah.
Including human life.
Well, Robert, are there any questions or are there any uses? I know you're a gamer, and I guess what I'm getting at is being a gamer, do you hear sound in games and think, ooh, this would be better if it ran through my mic pre, or maybe through my HG2 or something? Is there anything in the reverse that you might have for questions?
And a follow-up to that is, what games do you play often? As I piggyback.
Oh yeah, Chase always brings that up, and it's very true. Very good.
I'm gonna date myself in this one.
Do it.
Yes, World of Tanks. I love my World of Tanks.
That's modern. That's plenty modern.
Of course, any of the Sid Meier's stuff, all of the Civilizations. I love Civilization. I like the Total War series, although Napoleon's getting a little long in the tooth. I like the Napoleon Total War. That
strategy games.
Games. Yeah, because I'm getting getting a little up there in years. So some of the new stuff, it just looks like someone turned a strobe light on, in front of me. Like I don't know what to do.
I played this weekend. I bought Skyrim for the Nintendo Switch, and it wasn't 10 minutes before I was laying in bed with a sick stomach.
Oh no!
Yeah,
what the hell? So on a side note, away from black box analog, why? I mean, there's I'll play one Call of Duty, be fine. Play another Call of Duty, and I get motion sickness. It's not me. It's got to be. Because it doesn't happen with such regularity. There's something going on in the code, the graphics code, that people aren't syncing up or getting it to match with our eyes or something. What's going on there, guys? What do you think?
I've never gotten Skyrim sick.
It's usually low frame rate.
Yeah, I think it is. It's a low frame rate. And it could be because the Switch requires a different frame rate or something. But my God, I mean, I've been laid out from Call of Duty typically. But this one, I had to take a nap.
Maybe
now,
because it's
I'm not
Switch,
saying I'm old or nothing.
Your face, man.
What'd you say, Dan?
It's the Switch. You're holding it too close to your face.
I was on the television.
You just gotta hold it back like that.
I was on the television.
So do you look like this after playing?
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
That's good. Oh man.
Let's get a view of that, Chase. Oh my God. It was so painful. I almost immediately got on our chat and said, "Hey guys, who wants to buy Skyrim for $5 or $10 off?" I was just laid up in bed. But Bridget's having a blast with it. She's pulling the bow. She's picking locks. I mean, what's cool about it on the Switch is you got the Joy-Cons that you have to use for everything. So, like, you're swinging swords, and it's like a workout. Maybe that's what's problem is.
That's what laid you up.
Too much like a workout.
Yeah, it's a medieval workout. Anyway, I know that there's a lot of Skyrim fans out there, and I'm not trying to disparage the game, but I'm wondering if there might be an update coming that makes the graphics a little better on the Switch, because maybe something went wrong there. Because I don't get sick very often. Like I listed literally the 2 games that make me motion sick, give me motion sickness, and that's the occasional Call of Duty, and this apparently now Skyrim. Yeah, frame rate, right, Dan?
Maybe, yeah, it's possible. Or you're just standing too close to the screen, man.
Nah.
Maybe because your couch is back, and then you're standing up to do all the swinging, and so you're clearly closer than you normally would be.
Yeah, you might actually be
that's
right.
A guess. So Robert, I have a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
Regarding the hardware units. So you mentioned earlier that some of the components in there had between a 10 and 20% tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
Then you also mentioned that you had measured the left and right as being within 1/10 of a dB across the spectral range.
Well, they ship that way. Yes. Yes.
So that's why I'm sort of curious what your quality assurance step is like on the units, like with the trim knobs on the inside. I assume that is a tuning. There's like a tuning stage as well, but I'm just sort of curious what the end process is like.
Well, the first thing we do, the vacuum tubes that are in here, the main ones are new old stock. They're actually vacuum tubes that were made for the United States military. Luckily, they made a lot of them. But these vacuum tubes are old. They're at least 40 years old. I mean, they've never been used. I get cases of them, but something that old can fail, and fail rather suddenly. So the first thing we do is, those tubes get burnt in for about 3 days. If they run for 3 days and they seem to be working fine, they'll continue to work fine. And after that 3-day burn in, that's when we go in and we just sort of look at everything. And then, like I said, I have trimmers, and I can account for those tolerances. I can account for the differences in tubes, because they're all going to be a little bit different. They just are. Even if I put matching parts in the whole way across, or at least what, theoretically should be matching parts, there's still going to be a big difference. Again, for example, the resistors I have to use, they're 5% tolerance. If I have 2, 1,000 ohm resistors, at least that's what the manufacturer says. There can be a 5% difference, between one to the next, and there's nothing I can do about it. I can't go buy better parts. That's because I'm working with such big dumb stuff, and you're pounding a lot of power through it. Those are the tolerances you get when you start putting big things in your box. The caps, 10% tolerance. The volume knobs, 10%. I actually throw away probably 3 out of 4 knobs. That's one of the things I still do myself. I have a little I've got a little factory line there in Tustin that's manufacturing these now, but I still have to sort through pots and tubes and things, the things that are, I think are very important for the unit to do what it does. I still do those myself.
If a tube goes bad, are you the guy to contact and say, hey, can I get a new tube?
You could. I mean, or you can just call the people you bought it from, VK. They have
Gotcha.
extra vacuum tubes. Sometimes I'll just send out extra
Tubes, yeah.
Yeah, this, like I said, it's the particular tube I use. They call it a 6U8A. It was used to send like high frequency super secret signal stuff. That's what they used it for. Before that, it was used, weirdly enough, especially the triode part. I said it was a mixer tube. It was used in the very first televisions.
Oh, wow.
Back in 1947. That's when the tube dates back to.
Wow.
And they never made another one like it. And I've read all kinds of things saying that that vacuum tube is completely useless for audio. So no one ever used it for audio. It was considered useless for audio.
Apparently not.
Well, like I said, I figured if you pick something that's completely useless for audio and you don't know what you're doing, you'll probably come up with something. I told you before, no one with any common sense would have built things the way I built them.
Well, I think that's a great way to end the show. We've come to the end. Can you believe it's already been an hour?
That flew.
It flew by. Robert, thank you for joining us. Thank you for the awesome hardware. I'll be over there in about 20 minutes to bug you. No, I'm kidding. And then also, everybody, get that 15-day free trial on Plugin Alliance. Try it out. No harm in that. And you can even use it on some of the stuff that you've got. And of course, purchase it. That would be the best bet. Thank you, Isotope, again for sponsoring the show. Thank you, guys. All right, Chase, what do I do? I like Twitter.
Like us on Twitter. No, just kidding. You like us on Facebook. You follow us on Twitter. We don't have an Instagram. We don't do Snapchat. So just love us, and we will love you back.
Rad.
Should we do Snapchat? Should we do Instagram? Are people interested in Instagram stories?
But it's not going to be me.
I'm hanging up before this gets started. Robert, thanks again, and we'll see you in the green room as soon as I hit stop. You don't log out. You'll see us in just a second. Thanks, chatties. See you.